this is what I read in the Western mainstream media. So correct me if I'm wrong. They're saying right now there's a flood of Chinese EV coming to the overseas market. This is because it's not because China is making more EV cars, because they say China made about same number of EV cars this year as last year. But the difference is because the slowdown of the Chinese economy. So the Chinese domestic economy market couldn't absorb all the capacity of the Chinese EV car makers. So the Chinese car makers, they're making same amount of cars, but now they have to export the excess capacity to the overseas market. What do you say to that?
Yeah, so I think that's a very misunderstood point of view. Right now, the most of the really competitive automakers in China, aside from BYD, haven't really started to export things yet. A lot of the exports to European markets are actually by Tesla and by Volkswagen back to their own continent. So BYD itself is also, I would say it's only probably 10% of its sales, maybe 15% of its sales are export market. And the focus of their market is not Europe right now. It's far easier for them to crack places without a traditional automotive industry like Brazil, Thailand, and in the future, Indonesia also, and Israel, Australia, these places that are nearby the
And
shipping cost.
Russia, they have no competitor in Russia right now.
Actually,
All the Western. Go ahead.
you'd be amazed how many cars Cherry actually sold to Russia in the past year.
Встречайте Cherry Tiggo 7 Pro Max. Обновленный городской кроссовер с неповторимым дизайном. Точные линии кузова и спортивный характер покорят ваше сердце.
Russia is actually the largest export market for China right now. China exports, I think, over 800,000 last year, just the PVs. Yeah. So it's not because China has, it's not like there's this thing where, oh, the domestic demand is falling, so we must export. It's actually, they're still mostly focused on winning the domestic market right now. BYD is exporting a little more because the margins are frankly a lot higher because there's no competition outside of China for these things. In China, you have to battle everyone who are willing to control their costs and sell at almost no margin. It's very crazy. But what I think
Yeah,
that's
I noticed a lot of the EV cars sold in China, they're priced significantly lower than the price the exported model, because I compared the price, because I was looking at Indonesia. I live in Bali, right? So I'm looking at some of the EV cars they export to Indonesia. Like the price jumps. There's quite a big price jump when between the price the car is sold in China versus sold overseas. So I understand. I wasn't sure if it's because of the tariffs, but it makes sense that they also could sell price higher because they can.
Yeah. I think the margins on those BYD sales for export market is a lot higher. Obviously, the transport, you can only ship so many cars. They don't have a full infrastructure yet. There are many factors about this right now, but I think it's most important to say the China market right now is going through this really rapid movement from ICE to EVs. So when people talk about overcapacity in the China market, they're talking about a few things. They think there's too many EVs being produced in China, but the actual answer is people in the market want EVs. What's happening is that all these foreign legacy joint ventures in China, they have so many unsold ICE cars, they need to dump somewhere. So they're producing like these uncompetitive product in China and shipping back to going to Europe or go back to their homeland. And that's what
that's a great insight, because I remember. Okay, again, I'm going by my exposure to the Chinese social media via Douyin, right? And on Douyin, all these popular internet celebrities whenever they go shop for cars, most of the time it's like a soft advertisement with working with the Chinese car makers. But a lot of these, I just saw almost all like EV cars. They're all buying EV cars. But like I hardly see any ads for ICE cars. But then having said that, if the most of the exported EV from China to the rest of the world are Tesla and Volkswagen, why then is the US and the European politicians are upping arms right now about the flood of Chinese EV taking over our market? Now they're rolling out legislation both in Europe and United States to ban Chinese EV imports. Why is that?
Okay, well, this is something that we probably talk about a little bit, which is these countries think that it is okay to do business with China as long as China is on the low end of the technology spectrum. As soon as China can compete among the upper echelon, then it's game over for them. And I always talk about the importance of the automotive industry. It is the largest manufacturing industry in the world, and for some countries like Japan, it's represent 20% of their GDP through all the supportive industry. So it would be a huge catastrophe for Japan or Germany if their automakers lose to BYD. But the methodologies they're going right now is just really stupid, actually. And the rationale I try to make to people is this: if you look at the top automakers by revenue in China in 2023, the only one out of top 8 that's Chinese was BYD. So the other ones are Volkswagen, Benz, BMW, Toyota, Audi, Honda, and Tesla. And so even through all these complaints, these companies China is still their largest market, and they're afraid of losing market share when Chinese automakers like BYD goes into their home market. But actually, the biggest challenge for them is not in Europe; it's in China, because China is the largest market in the world. And if you do a situation where maybe the Europeans block a few more Chinese cars coming over, but Chinese government can hit back with the same sanctions on the German or Japanese automakers or American automakers, then the Chinese automaker actually win a lot more from this.
But somehow I don't think Chinese government will do reciprocal sanctions like that, because I mean, from just the past from the past several years, Chinese government is a lot more selective when it comes to actually apply sanctions. They really try not to pick industries that will cause a lot of collateral damage, right? Because there's still a lot of joint ventures in China that's making the car for the domestic market. They're not like most of them are not wholly owned like Tesla is. That would be interesting if China bans Tesla, but I don't see that in the cards.
Yeah, so I do agree with you on that front, that China is unlikely to have put the similar level of sanctions on Western automakers. So what will be interesting to see is this current drive toward EVs and how much that drives away foreign automakers. So in the past couple of weeks, BYD has, since the Chinese New Year, has started a new campaign called 电比油便宜, and it's a very, very good campaign, because what they did was they cut all the plug-in hybrid cars to cheaper than internal combustion engine cars, and the effect of this is immediate. You can see that the sales from Volkswagen, Honda, Toyota, and Nissan all collapse overnight, actually, in China. And we've reached probably 44% this past week in the NEV penetration in China, and they'll probably hit 50% by April or May.
44, is that 44% of all cars sold, or 44% of all the vehicles in China right now? That's
No, 44% of the new sales are in EVs. That's a little more reasonable, right? And we think we're going to hit 50% in the first half of this year. And the question is, once you get to like maybe 60-70% later this year, what would that do to like Toyota or Honda? You know, we talk about national security and things like that, right? And the effect of Japanese automakers being forced out of the China market will be humongous. It's a very geopolitical event, big event.
I mean, it's not unthinkable either, because if you look, I mean, just look at example of Korean automakers. You know, they used to have a nice size of market share in China, but they pretty much have been pushed out of the Chinese car market in the last few years. I mean, it's not a stretch to think that Japanese car maker could follow the same, follow the same route.
Yeah, so like I always tell people that I think the Germans will stick around because this is their biggest market, but the Japanese and the non-Tesla American automakers are going to get pushed out in the next few years. And I think that will have a huge ripple effect. But even more than that is what BYD will do to Japanese automakers in several countries.
This is the interesting part, though. So this is one I have my own questions. I mean, I can see the rapid adoption EV inside China because Chinese government and all these companies have built amazing support infrastructure for EV, because you need charging station, right? And whereas in China, you know, they have a lot of power plants to supply electricity, but in other parts of the world, say like Indonesia for the moment, you know, Indonesia is an oil producer and this government subsidized the fuel, and the charging station infrastructure is nowhere where it should be, and so I'm sure the situation in Indonesia is replicated across the globe in many global South countries. So how can Chinese EV break in? I mean, like, I'm not talking break it, like kind of how can they hope to gain a lot wider market share under those circumstances?
Yeah, so there's basically BYD produces both plug-in hybrid cars and pure battery electric cars, and you know, there's significant advantages to plug-in hybrid cars because one, you're more efficient. A lot of times when you're driving, you can charge at home and not even spend any money on gas for months. But it removes the range anxiety because the range of plug-in hybrid cars are all over like 1,000 kilometers. So they're great. But most importantly, we're finding that as BYD starts to release its cheaper models abroad, its sales go up exponentially. And so I think we're gonna see that in the next few years as BYD builds out its what I call EV infrastructure, or like export infrastructure. So it gets its like fleet of ships. It has its own like fleet where it can just ship cars from China to abroad, or it builds out its factories. You know, it's building one in Thailand right now. It's building one in Indonesia. It's building one in Brazil. It's building one in Hungary. It's building all these places, right? Once it gets these export infrastructure worked out, then it can really push out more models, lower prices. And once you get to a point where the exported models are cheaper than the ICE cars in those countries, it will be very easy, especially if you're selling plug-in hybrid for the market share to go up exponentially. And I think that I think you're gonna see that. I was looking at the Southeast Asian market. It's like a 3 million car market. And you and I know, like, it's Southeast Asia, there's a lot of Japanese cars around, right? Japanese are everywhere in Southeast Asia. Just imagine once you get to a point where everyone looks outside, they see the Chinese car as the more impressive, more technologically advanced, cooler. It can drive itself. It can talk to you on its screens. It will be like a huge gain for China and all the Chinese industries when it comes to like brand recognition and just people knowing that this is where you go for the latest technology.
Yeah, that would be the final blow to the Japanese automakers, because they have long dominated the Southeast Asian market. Indonesia, everything from motorbike to cars. Mostly Japanese manufacturer. They have factories in Indonesia making them. But there's already the Chinese automaker already made some inroad. Wuling Motor had their own plants in Indonesia, cranking out the Wuling ICE cars. But now they have recently they introduced the electric model, the little Wuling mini cars. I already see them on Bali, on the street of Bali. But now with the BYD will be, I guess, be the second Chinese manufacturer to set up their factory in Indonesia.
Yeah, I wouldn't drive in one of those mini cars. I'd be scared for life to involve them. but I would be comfortable even driving the smallest BYD cars, because they're built very solidly. They're very safe.
Oh yeah, I mean, what I want is I want the Huang, man. I want the Huang UA, but it's a little bit pricey for my for my price range right now.
But if you look at there's all these videos online of these rich Russians just paying double or triple the amount that you get in China to get them somehow across the border into Russia, and they're showing off to their friends, and they have their own videos and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a great leap, because the Chinese manufacturer is now making the transition from maker of the cheap goods to maker of luxury items. They have what's the other luxury car that there's another luxury
Li Auto?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, those are beautiful cars. Those are gorgeous sports cars.
Yeah, the funny thing is when Li Auto came out, they came out with these great spacious cars. They have massage chairs, they have tables, they have fridge. You can cook instant noodles on them. You can watch TV. So it becomes like a home. And the Japanese are like, why do you need all this stuff? But this is what, once people get this stuff, they're like, we don't want to go to the stuff that, that doesn't give me all this great goods,
Yeah.
So, Chinese automakers are also selling a new lifestyle to people in China and hopefully the rest of the world.
Look forward to great things from the China. But do you think the Western sanctions that's coming is going to have an effect on crippling the growth of the Chinese EV market outside of China?
I don't really think so. I think the focus of BYD and a lot of these Chinese automakers are actually more targeted toward global South countries first, and a lot of the countries without domestic automotive industry. It's always hard to enter a market where there's a lot of brand loyalty for the domestic automakers, right? So it's going to take some time for brand, because a lot of European countries, they still think of Chinese product as cheap goods. So only when they start seeing all these fancy gadgets out of Chinese cars that look really good, they're going to slowly change their mind. So BYD is not going to take over Europe quickly. It's going to take many long times of months and years of brand building in these.
Yeah, markets. I don't think Chinese EV will make any will gain any market in US anytime soon, just because the political climate in the US right now. It's I think they're rolling out new legislation targeting BYD actually, because that's what they do. The first they targeted Huawei, now they're coming after TikTok and BYD. So any kind of growth that Chinese EV makers will be outside of these U.S. and depending on what kind of legislation that come out of EU, but mostly they will the market. I think you're right. Will be in the global South countries.
Can I give you just my view on why this is so self-damaging longer term
Yes,
for Western
please.
countries if they're doing this. So I think for me at least the ability to have what China's doing for EVs right now is only the first part of the story. There will be this is the beginning step toward a new AI driven world that we have. So the reason why Huawei and Xiaomi got into EVs is because they wanted to plug in they wanted to connect smart home, smart consumer electronics product, your phones with your car. So you can do everything over the web using AI to tell stuff at home to do functions, and eventually we get to a world where we have a bunch of robots. Now that sounds like crazy, right? But what you're seeing in China right now is that they're bringing humanoid robots, so robots that look like humans, into the factory spaces. And the great thing about EVs is that the basic technology you're developing for EVs is also the same technology you need for humanoid robots. And longer term, once you have this industry developed, you're going to take over the world because everyone that has money is going to want to have a robot that does stuff for them at home. And China is going to be able to make these things really cheaply. And then eventually you're going to get to a world where China develops and makes all these great high-end products that never make it to America, so never generates any kind of innovation in America. And the Americans go outside America and they realize, wow, the rest of the world has all this great stuff made by China. And I'm stuck with shitty roads and hospitals that are flooded.
Well, this is why Gina Raimondo said we can't have Chinese EV in America because all the data, because the CCP is listening to the Americans in their cars. They're sending all this data to Americans from their homes straight to their data center in Beijing. So I mean, I unfortunately I think you are right. I think this is why we can't even have like $10,000 cars in America right now that Chinese consumers could get inside China. There's actually need for $10,000 cars in US, but the US leader won't allow that to happen.
I can understand from the point of view they're afraid of Chinese competition because they can't compete against China. Let's face it, US dollar is way overvalued. But longer term, we're definitely getting to a point where China knows what's going on in America in terms of new technology development, whether it's AI, whether it's semiconductors. America is just clueless. Not that you can't get this information. If I can get this information over the web, anyone can, right? But they don't want to look at it. So they're missing out on all these technological trends going on in China where AI is not just making cat videos or things like that, but it's also improving our lives from automation.
But I mean, this is the whole rationale behind Eric Schmidt's crusade against Chinese semiconductor industry, right? The whole point is to cripple the Chinese semiconductor industry so they don't have the support infrastructure for the development of Chinese AI. That Eric Schmidt was very clear about that. But so you're saying that that's going to fail. U.S. actually was able to identify semiconductor industry as the weakest point, in the Chinese tech chain, and the claim is for China to be able to replicate the entire semiconductor industry. It's like to replicate the human civilization itself. It's a very complicated, complex a process with supply chain that's truly globalized. So you're saying China is going to be able to break through that in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it's evident that these things have already failed, and I think in terms of the artificial intelligence, the hardware computation you need to support these new automation and new products out there. They already have enough computation power for that.
Now, what do you say to the people who say, well, how come China didn't come out with ChatGPT?
Okay, so I think this is a kind of interesting thing between China and America in terms of its approaches, right? China is very much about making things, making hard, real stuff, whereas America, because it had this atrophy of manufacturing industries, there's less focus on that. There was a lot of focus on internet services, financial services, and from that aspect, so the AI effort was all given to drive the developing contents, like what we call generative AI. And you're seeing that a lot with Sora that came out a while ago that was able to make videos that are 60-second long. These technologies will keep getting better, but you're not seeing this like you see in China with these drones that can fly themselves, the cars that can drive themselves, the robots that can just remove the need for any humans in the factories. That's crazy, right? Like all these technologies that are actually making things easier for our lives and not just producing cat videos. And so you're seeing that China is a little bit behind in these GPT areas. It is a little bit, but it's not a huge gap. Like we saw recently was Alibaba. They came out with that really great tool where you give it a picture, you give it audio, and you can just make the picture turn to a real person, like doing videos and things like that. Mona Lisa singing, for example.
Yes, one. And in this manner, he was to imagine me his love, his mistress. And I set him every day to woo me, at which time would I, being but a moonish youth, grieve, be effeminate, changeable, longing and liking, proud, fantastical, apace, shallow.
I saw that. That's impressive. Wow, I mean, this is we've been here for almost an hour, and this is a fascinating conversation. I would love to continue this conversation very shortly in the very immediate future, when I believe there's probably going to be more Chinese scientific breakthroughs and semiconductor breakthroughs, most importantly, that I think will probably roll out either late this year or early next year. And I will very much look forward to continue this conversation with you when that happens.
I'll be glad to come back and talk about these things. These are very exciting times. Huawei did say 2025 is the year of their comeback.
Well, thank you very much, TP, and thanks everyone for listening. Until next time. Bye-bye.